There's a race of beings upon the planet increasing in number, although visually and physically indistinguishable to most humans. They are the bringers of the new, the bringers of light. They're here to guide the awakening of terrestrial consciousness. Now, what I wanted to know was, where is the evidence? Because that sounds wonderful, and I do believe that this is what's going on. But we need to look at the evidence. She also talks about the fact that the DNA of the star kid has tenfold the amount of information. So we have to look at that, and we have to say, well, where again is the evidence of that? Many of those that would see themselves as star kids or indigos, crystals, golden children, children of light. The metaphysical community has many names for these different types of children being born now. And even ordinary grandparents, if I speak to the Rotary or I'm talking at a library, will say the grandparents will notice that their grandchildren are different somehow, even although they can't quantify it. So this is something that's been noticed in mainstream. I meet teachers that tell me the children are different now. So what is the evidence? First of all, what I have discovered is that it's global. And in the Himalayas, there's evidence of children there that show strange behavior. Children using unknown sign languages. Children who draw pictures of triangular objects flying in the sky. And that they communicate with telepathy with unseen ETs. So this is in the Himalayas. We have in Mexico, similar kind of story. Mexican children that also manifest similar behavior. Many in the area reporting a long time UFO sightings, young children, extra agile, this is how it was written, and very talented. Their problem-solving skills have increased. They're much more disciplined, continually using strange sign language among themselves. And in Mexico City alone, 1,000 children have been identified who are able to see with various parts of their bodies. And I actually saw on a DVD a young lady of 17. And not only could she, when she was blindfolded, actually describe with her hand, scanning the photograph, what was on the photograph, but when they put a newspaper under her feet, she could read the headlines through her shoes. So it seems like we've got abilities that we are only just tapping into. What's fascinating also in China, there's been discovered that there are a lot of children in China with similar abilities. And Paul Dong calls these China's super psychics. And they are also showing amazing psychic and intuitive abilities. They have the ability to open flower buds with thought alone, display telekinetic abilities, as well as other fascinating multidimensional skills such as sensing others' thoughts. Being reported that the Chinese government has observed these children changing the human DNA molecule in a Petri dish before cameras and scientific equipment to record this supposedly impossible feat. There are many other things that they actually have been able to identify, and these children are now being fostered and being encouraged throughout China. So, what do the star kids themselves tell me? That not only do they have memories of being on spacecraft and being educated, they often have past life memories, including ones where they are not human. Information they have not consciously learned seems to be downloaded in many different ways, and I'm going to talk about the downloads in a minute. They have a sense of purpose, a sense of mission. They feel, excuse the pun, alienated on this planet. They find other human beings actually quite barbaric. And they'll say to me, I can't understand how we operate on this planet. It seems really primitive. And they are very intelligent and intuitively creative.
According to Bashar, and to my understanding, and I do resonate with this, these indigo, crystals, star kids coming in, there's many possible scenarios of how they're becoming so light and bright and psychic. And one of the things that Bashar talks about is that the genetic material is actually modified in these abduction scenarios, and they're kept. So they manipulate the egg or whatever's going on, they put it into the woman, and she actually then has the kid with her husband and the mom, and then, part extraterrestrial. So for me, and based on what I've talked about with my dad and my mom and people around me, I think I have some genetic material that is part extraterrestrial more than most would. So back then, over the past 100 years or so, there's been this abduction program, also known as the hybridization program.
Okay.
Where these extraterrestrials are taking humans and taking them up to the ship and then taking their genetic material, so their sperm or eggs.
Okay.
And then creating children out of them.
And of the people that are being taken, do they know anything about this? That their DNA and their genetic material is being taken at the time?
A lot of people, one of the things that they do is they have actually screen memories over, overlaid over their actual experiences so that they forget. But there's always kind of like a hint of it with dreams, remnants, or they might have physical things that come up, like they feel pregnant, or like their ovaries are aching, or physical things.
It's like a phantom pregnancy that's mirroring what's happening on a craft or spaceship sort of thing. So how did it start with you?
How did it start with me? It started with me when I started doing a bunch of healing work.
Okay.
So I was doing, I was working with angels and ghosts and other lives and all these kind of things. And one of the things that kept coming up was this concept of abduction.
Yeah.
And then all these abductees started coming to me and telling me their stories. And I'm like, this is real. Like, these people actually think that they were taken. And I was thinking that it wasn't me the whole time. And then finally, over time, like, these memories started to come up for me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a part of this. Of course, that's why it's coming up.
Yeah. So, when did you think they when they took you, all your genetic material?
Well, the biggest, like, memory unlocker was a regression that I did.
Okay.
With Barbara Lamb, and she's one of the top ET regressors in the world, and all of my memories, like, just came flooding back from that. And so it started when I was about age 3.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And why particularly you? Why not the person in the next house down the street?
They take, well, it could be the person in the next house.
Yeah, of course. It could be the whole street.
Right. Everyone going. They take genetic lines.
Oh,
so
okay.
they've taken my dad, they took my grandma, so they take certain genetic lines and lineages. So they're always working usually in the families.
Yeah. But why do they choose these particular families?
The genetics, so the energetic structure of that certain family line, as well as the physical genetics that they're looking for, and also the soul contracts that these family lineages have to participate in this other way.
A soul contract. What explain?
So
it sounds quite
serious.
Sinister. Yeah. So you're 3 years old. They take you. So how did it progress from that to children? And could you talk about the child experience and all that stuff? Okay.
So with my generation, because this kind of goes to the question you were just asking, my generation, it was a lot more positive. So there were experiences on these spaceships. They were like super exciting and fun, and I was always excited to go. Yeah. And it's similar with my generation, but the generations back, these Greys, they didn't have the emotional capacity as humans do. Yeah. So they didn't know how to treat us. Oh. And so a lot of people had very terrifying experiences, or that it was like physically hurtful in ways. Yeah. But then by the time they got to my generation and me, it was a lot more exciting. Yeah. So in those first years after 3 years old, I was on the ship just kind of exploring and getting used to it. And I'd go up with my family, and I remember going up with them, so it was kind of
like a family outing.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Just spaceship for the night.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
and then I was working with them to actually like design these children.
Yeah.
And by the time I became of age to actually like give eggs, then at that time I was like, okay, well, I'm excited to give my eggs because I understand the whole thing and the program and everything. So that's when it changed.
So how long does when you give your eggs, how long much later is a child produced? And how does that work? Is it in they got tanks or?
Yeah.
Yeah?
How did you know that?
I don't know. Maybe I'm up there
sometimes.
I
know. Have you seen some tanks before?
Anyway, moving on.
Okay. So how I mean, it's one of these things that is so non-linear and so multidimensional that it's hard to wrap my human brain around. Just even a few months ago, I was taken over here in Sedona, and I saw a ship physically in the sky, and then a few minutes later, my ovaries were hurting and like aching and pain, like I had just been in surgery. So they can take the eggs and then like artificially kind of inseminate and then put them back in.
Oh, okay.
And they keep them a lot of the times in the human mothers on Earth. So women will be like, I'm pregnant.
But it is with their own child. It's not like like third
switching.
World. Yeah.
It's usually with their own child, but there could be other DNA strands. There could be multiple people in that.
Yeah, you got to see how people could find this quite
cruel.
Cruel, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Until the part that's so beautiful on the other end, because a lot of the time people get caught up in the cruelty or all of that energy, but the kids are like the best, most light part of the whole thing. That's why they did it. Is for us to have these kids and for us to have this opportunity to like awaken to this lighter part of ourselves.
Yeah. So they're incubating your baby upstairs, for want of a better word. And so what was it like the first time you saw your child? And could you talk a bit about your child as well?
The first time I saw my child, in this case, it was pretty sad because I was only like 12 or 13 years old, and it was the first one that was created.
Okay.
And they had stuck like this needle like this long into my hip to pull out hip tissue because the child wasn't forming correctly.
Okay.
And so they were trying to like save this kid, and he ended up like dying because in the beginning they were just trying to figure out how to do this. Yeah. And it was it was so sad to like it was like mourning the death of my child.
You know.
Yeah, so it was really sad.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But the other ones that I've met in dream time and remembering these experiences, it's just like it's like pure ecstasy. It's so much fun, and it's so like, and it is so maternal. Like they're actually like on your breasts on the ship, and it's just.
So you said how many have you got? That you know of?
I'm aware of probably 10 at this point.
So you're a mother of 10 at 26?
I'm a mother of 10 at 26.
It's the Mormon heritage.
Right, it must have been. It must have been.
So, like, forgive any of the facetiousness of the questions, but, do you get to, like, visit them and take them out playing, or do they live on the ship? How does it... Can you talk us through that?
They live primarily on the ship. So, have you ever heard of the Phoenix Lights in 1997? Down the street from here? So that was the huge mile-long mothership that came over Phoenix.
Oh, yeah.
So those are one of the hybrid civilizations that were created. So they not only are creating these kids that are coming back to be with us on Earth, but they created 5 whole civilizations of very benevolent, loving beings.
Oh. Okay, yeah.
And that's one of them. So the kids coming to Earth are on the ships.
So they come down to Earth, or do any of the kids visit you? You see what I mean, like
physically?
Yeah.
Here? They haven't visited me physically here, but they visited a lot of the other people in the ET community here. Like even one of our friends in Sedona, like they actually like landed and the kid was in her living room. Oh, wow. And Stan Romanek, who's public about this, he is big in the UFO community, and he has had his children like come to some of his events physically.
Oh, wow.
So they're starting to come, but the thing is they can't come in the present way our society is set up. Set up as like, okay, we're going to our job and our individual house and everything.
Well, they probably get shot, wouldn't they? that'd be it. Yeah, bang,
Yeah.
bye.
Right.
So what do they look like? Because I've seen drawings, but people listening to this or watching this won't know what they look like. So could you talk us through that?
They're different. There's different kind of varieties of them, different generations of them.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they're children. So they could be like kids from like 3 all the way up to 18.
Okay.
And they have slightly bigger eyes than humans. Some of them look quite human. So people might have dreams about the kids and be like, "Oh, I'm just having dreams about kids," and it's like, no, they're actually the hybrids. But and then some have quite bigger eyes.
Okay.
And smaller lips, slightly bigger heads, and then just like skinny little bodies. So they just look like kind of odd, cute looking humans.
Yeah. So how many people, because you said moms, like, how many people do you think this is happening to, if you had to guess?
Well, I've heard numbers from different channels material that it's a third of the world's population is a part of this program. So you never know. But then but as far as the ones that are really aware right now and the mothers that we're working with, I'm aware of like at least probably 40 or 50 moms that I'm like that are aware, like working with their kids and dream time and talking to them and but there's thousands.
Because like, what is the plan for your children? Like you said, what happens to them when they turn 18? Like, and how do they feel living on a spaceship?
So they're kept out of time right now. So they are set to come to Earth when they're still children.
Oh, okay.
So they will better receive kids, right?
Yeah,
adults.
Sure. Well, maybe not now after this.
Right. We're more likely to accept cute children than like adult aliens.
Yeah, sure.
And our own children, like they're our physical children.
People who didn't know they had children, it would be a very nice surprise.
Right.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
And a lot of time, one of the things is that when women can't reproduce, it's because they're supposed to be. It's like, wake up, you do have kids in this other reality.
Okay. So you've been talking about a community, and there's a few of you. Are you planning to like gather the mothers together in parts of the world and stuff? Yeah. Could you talk about that a bit?
So for the kids to be able to come here, because they're super high vibration, they're a different frequency than humans in general. I mean, they just like teleport, and they're like completely ecstatic, and they know exactly who they are, and they're super creative and imaginative. And so for them to be existing on Earth, they can't exist in the way that we exist now. So they can exist in the sacred sites that are super high frequency. So we're here in Sedona, which is the highest frequency place in the northern hemisphere. It's the huge vortex. And places like Shasta and Maui and Glastonbury eventually, and these places that are super high frequency, so it's more alignment with theirs. Somewhere where it's away from the collective energies of the cities, so we're going to create our own sustainable structures that are in sacred geometry, and living together as like a unified whole, like so where everyone's living their passion and not kind of pooped out after work and like having to like get the money to pay the rent, where everyone can like literally like just run free and like express themselves. And so in this coming together and as this new kind of like society, or this new kind of like way of living, then the kids, it's more in alignment with them because they work together.
But all right, last question. Have you ever been afraid when this has happened at any point? Yeah. Just tell me about it.
I mean, in the beginning, like the very concept of this whole thing is completely freaked me out. I mean, like, and I could feel the fear from so many people that have had negative experiences, which of course is just coming from through the filters of like, I want to be in control of my human life, and something else that's outside of my control is scary. Just that alone is scary. But and then these beings look different and strange. So I mean, there was a time when Zeta was in my room, and then also this mantis, like, you know, the praying mantis? They have like the tall mantises.
They're not doing themselves any favours, are they? Like bringing these fellas along.
No, they're not. Yeah, so I was like terrified, but I just knew that I had to get over this fear. Because it's just, why have fear? Like, why? I mean, I'm interacting with them, so I can have love.
Yeah, they're not killing you or anything.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
They're assisting on a greater level.
Jesse, when do you first recall being abducted?
My first abduction occurred in 1957 when I was 5 years old in Rogersville, Tennessee, a very small town in Upper East Tennessee. My brother John was with me at the time. Above the hill behind our house, we came up on what appeared to be a round house under construction. And one man, a taller-looking figure, he had a long rod in his hand. A light was emitted from it, and we were paralyzed.
It is at this point that Jesse Long's conscious memory of what happened ends. He says it's only through hypnosis that he's been able to remember the rest of this first abduction. What you are seeing is actual footage of Jesse undergoing hypnotic regression.
You will not be
I remember being taken into the craft, taken into one room. I was placed on a very cold, flat table. My brother was separated and he was taken into another room. They were doing something down to my legs. I could feel them poking and prodding around my legs.
According to Jesse, his abductors inserted a small item, an alien implant, into his left shin.
And it was in my body for 34 years.
Could you feel it inside you? What did it feel like?
It was always painful. I always had to wear my socks below the incision point because it was painful.
In 1991, Jesse had the foreign object removed from his leg.
There it is.
This is actual footage of that procedure.
That's a good half-inch long. This is the object that was in my leg. And unfortunately, during the initial test that was done on it, it was broken into two pieces. But that allowed us to look at the inside.
Some have dismissed the object as simply a shard of glass. But when it was analyzed at Southwest Research Institute, a materials analysis facility in Texas, the conclusions suggested a greater mystery. According to the lab's report, the object revealed a very remarkable composition and exhibited unique surface characteristics that cannot be explained, and that the questions outnumber the answers.
When the object was removed, I was convinced that whatever this object was had something to do with all of my abductions.
Jesse Long believes he has experienced a number of abductions since that first incident in 1957. And they became more and more horrific as he grew into an adult.
Most of my abductions occurred very similarly. When they brought me into the craft, they would take me down a long hallway. They would place me on a flat table. Of course, I was paralyzed and had to be because I was kicking and screaming. I didn't want to be there. The experiments on the table included a sperm extraction. The sperm extraction procedure is the most traumatic and has caused me the most problems in that they actually force me to crossbreed with what seems to be a female being.
Okay, you're gonna wake up. 1,
to.
And those people tend to be the people who are boundary deficit disordered. They have problems with relationships. They always say, I've always felt like an outsider. I don't feel like I belong. They can't hold jobs. They just have a tough time in life. And telling this person who's been lost and outside and alone that they do belong, that they're an abductee, that they have an identity, and that there are other people just like them, answers all of those questions for them.
Jesse, when you tell people about your experiences, do they believe you?
You know, it's not my job to convince anybody. It's my job just to tell you what I've experienced. If you believe it, fine. If you don't believe it, I don't care.
This is evidence that can't be ignored. And the story just gets more and more disturbing. What Jesse says happened to him in 1990 may answer the question that hangs over every abduction account. Why is this being done?
I was driving from California to New Orleans, and right outside of Albuquerque, New Mexico on I-40, my car was lifted off the interstate up into a craft with me in the car. I was taken aboard the craft, placed on a table. I was presented with a baby, was told, "This is your child."
What happened then?
And there were 9 other children standing along the wall. They all looked at me, and I could see, yes, they were mine. Each of the children who were standing along the wall walked up to me lying on the table, and they each touched my hand as they walked by and looked me straight in the eyes. And they walked on out of the room. And the message I was getting from them was, "We're okay. Thank you."
If you could confront your abductors, what would you say to them?
If I could sit down with one of them right now and ask them one question, I would want to know why me and for what reason.
We have thousands and thousands and thousands of people coming forward with these cases, not only around the United States, but around the world as well.
David Jacobs based his book The Threat on the explosive issue of hybrids, the crossbreeding of aliens with humans. For Jacobs, stories like Jesse Long's are only the beginning.
I think we are looking at a catastrophic situation. I think we are looking at a disaster. We are seeing a unified program here with these beings, a program of physiological exploitation by one species of another. And I know this sounds absolutely insane. We're looking at a colonization program in some way.
Tom, tell me about the hybrid humans.
This is one of the things that I didn't even expect would arrive in our study. There is academics who actually believe that there is a hybridity program that is going on right now. And this took me on a kind of a long journey that brought me back to one question, Sid, and that is why in ancient days when the giants, the first original hybrid humans, right, when they were created by fallen angels and were upon the earth, what was their mission, what was their program? It also had to do with hybridity, and it also had to do with misleading and misguiding and even challenging God himself. But notice that the oldest descriptions of those giants, how tall they were, 20 feet, 30 feet. They would be easy to pick up, right? There's a movie out there right now, Jack the Giant Slayer, and it's kind of based on that mythos that exists in every culture around the world. They tell the story. The gods came down. The gods mingled themselves with humans. They took human genetics, animal genetics. They created a hybrid body. Now the question is, down through time. You know, the Bible tells us there were giants in those days and also after that. So now we get past the flood, and you have the Og, the king of Bashan. What is he, 12 feet tall? He's certainly not 20 or 30. And it looks to me like there was an intentional breeding down in size of these hybrid humans until today they could possibly be walking among us, and we might not even know that we see them. There are academics who actually believe now that they are walking among us, that they're even in government. Now, that sounds astonishing. Sounds like a sci-fi movie, right?
It does. In fact, why is Hollywood glamorizing all these things at the same time?
Well, that's exactly right. So is that part of a setup? Are there occultists in Hollywood that have an agenda to try to help prepare humanity for what could be a kind of great deception?
Genesis 6:9 talks about Noah. Explain that.
Our research led us to believe that something that happened in ancient days could be occurring even now as we speak. And when I say ancient days, I'm talking about the days of Noah, a time when all of the ancient records from around the world tell us that very powerful angels came down and they mingled with humans and with animals.
The best record is the Bible. The Nephilim is what he's talking about. Go ahead.
Absolutely, the Nephilim. And it was a period of time in which only Noah, and therefore by extension his children, were found, according to the Old Testament, perfect. When you study why the great flood came, the scripture makes it very clear that it happened because all flesh, both man and beast, had been corrupted. So something was happening in ancient days that had to do with the genetic degradation of God's creation.
What does it mean when it says in the Torah about Noah that he was perfect?
Yes, this is the Hebrew word temyem. Means it's the same phrase that's used to describe an unblemished sacrificial lamb. It's talking about genetics. It's talking about his DNA had not been corrupted, as evidently the rest of the world had been by that time. So there was a saturation, an intermarriage between angels and humans, and then through intermarriage this was spreading over hundreds of years until finally, by the time we reach Noah, he's the last specimen left that has a genetic makeup, his DNA, as God had made it. And therefore, you understand why God has to send this flood to wipe out all of this contaminated forms of life, and sent this judgment in the days of Noah. Now, Jesus says, as it was in the days of Noah.
Oh, yes. Tell me this. In the parable of the wheat and the tares, the weeds, the wheat and the weeds, the Messiah said, let them grow up together. Don't pull them out. I'm wondering if that's the difference between those whose DNA has not been corrupted and those whose DNA has been corrupted, perhaps through a hybridization process of these aliens. What do you think?
You know, Sid, behind the scenes right now, this question is unfolding among academics in a way that you can't even possibly imagine, where they're asking the question, have we concluded that hybrids are among us? And if hybrids are among us, can they even be saved? This is a complex question that's being raised by theologians right now. Isn't that an astonishing thing?
What's even more astonishing to me is the Vatican's secret plan for welcoming in an alien god with a small g. We'll be right back.
It's supernatural.
I'll tell you what. Very few Christians, Protestants, or Catholics understand what you're about ready to understand right now. But there are secret plans for welcoming. The Vatican will welcome in this alien from another planet as God. Tell me about that.
Well, Sid, you know, when you look at Bible prophecy and it talks about a one world government and a one world religion, you know, you see how divided the world still is. And, you know, we have to think that something unprecedented is going to occur that would unite the world under one heading like that. Now, Ronald Reagan gave a speech to the United Nations where he said how quickly our differences would be resolved if we were faced with an alien threat from outside this world. I mean, this is in the 80s. He gave this speech in the UN. Now, if you look around the world, what people believe, I mean, statistics in the United States say around 50% of Americans already think that UFOs are aliens visiting the Earth. Now, there was a recent poll in the United Kingdom. more people believe in extraterrestrials in the UK than God, okay? And that's a fact. And so to me, the strong delusion is already here. The groundwork has been laid. And our hypothesis is these powers and principalities that Paul writes about in Ephesians 6, these demonic forces have seeded this idea into the world, so we are primed and ready for a deception.
Okay, but what makes you think the Vatican has planned to announce this?
Well, they're having astrobiology conferences. They've made it intellectually virtuous to believe in these extraterrestrials. Their writings coming out of their theologians have pretty much made the argument that if you don't believe in extraterrestrials, then that is actually the heresy.
You talk about that the Vatican is going to reevaluate their position on basic Christianity. What do you mean by that?
Well, their theologians have written that they think that these entities will be evangelizing us, that they think the chances are that they're not fallen and we are, so that we would have to modify our beliefs according to their revelation.
So are they talking about setting up teams to evangelize humans and aliens? Is that what you're really talking about?
Well, if you get on the internet right now, you'll find
and baptize them?
Hundreds of articles from the Vatican astronomers talking about baptizing extraterrestrials.
100 years ago, our top wonderful theologians had predictions based on their study of Scripture. Tell me about Hawkins Pember that wrote about the days of Noah 100 years ago.
George Hawkins Pember was writing in the 19th century, and he found parallels between what he saw in the days of Noah and his age. And, he pulled out 7 parallels, and there were things like the church marrying itself to the world. Well, and I went through his list and then compared it to where we are now. Now, everything that he saw in the 19th century has just, exponentially grown. I mean, you look at like the church married to the world. Now we have mainline denominations ordaining homosexual clergy and putting them up as their leadership.
But they saw this 100 years ago. It was coming.
He did, and the 7th thing on his list was actually the appearance of these entities, and he called them from the prince of the power of the air, which is what Paul calls Satan in Ephesians chapter 2. Now, the demonic realm in the New Testament worldview was the atmosphere above the earth.
Now, tell me a couple other points that he saw.
Well, Pember saw a vast population increase, for one. Now, our population has grown by leaps and bounds since something he couldn't even imagine. He saw a confusion of gender roles. He was talking about it in the 19th century.
Does that sound familiar to you? It sounds familiar to me.
I don't think he would even have any, inkling of how far that's gone now. I mean, now we have transsexuals, we have, homosexual marriages.
What did he say about holiness?
He saw that there was an emphasis on God being benevolent to the extent that they denied his holiness. Now, I think that we see this in this idea of pluralism, which is so popular in our culture, where all religions point to the same God. And this is a really acceptable notion in today's society. Like, to talk about hell or eternal punishment or the exclusivity of our Messiah, Yeshua, is the thing that most people don't tolerate.
But you see, all these things the Bible says is black and white. They've got to be watered down for there to be a one-world religion. I mean, what a setup. I want you to tell me the strongest thing in all of your research, and you've done, both of you have done extensive research. I want each of you to tell me the strongest thing you found in your research.
Well, as I'm listening right now to you and Chris talking, the strongest thing that's in my mind is what Vatican experts have told us. When Father Malachi Martin was asked, why do they have a presence on Mount Graham? And one of the things we haven't had time to talk about is Mount Graham is sacred to the Apache. It is a stargate through which they've, for centuries, have seen creatures that come, that move back and forth.
Now, this is right in Arizona.
This is in Arizona. And in fact, their creation mythos is that a disc came down and a bearded guy in the disc, who was the father of creation, was what established Mount Graham as a a holy mountain. Well, anyway, when Malachi Martin was asked, why is the Vatican on Mount Graham? What are they doing up there? He said that they're using their telescope to watch something. And when he was pressed on the question, he said it's because at the highest levels of the Vatican governance, they know what is approaching the earth, and it will be of the utmost importance in coming years. They're literally watching something with the Lucifer device that is approaching planet Earth now.
And what do you believe they're looking for?
I think that they could be deceived. I think they're watching something and they think it's one thing, and I think it's something else.
Yeah, my name's Aluna. I'm 27. And what was the last one?
Where are you from?
Oh, from Kansas.
Kansas City.
Kansas City.
And you now live here in Los Angeles?
Yes.
Okay, brilliant. So, the hybrid children, talk me through it. How did you first discover?
So, several years ago, about 3 years ago, I came to LA and I had a private session with Bashar, who is a channeled extraterrestrial. It was about an hour deep, and I asked him about these experiences that I had had when I was like 16 and older, that I could remember when I was 16, where I would have these like sleep paralysis in the middle of the night. I would wake up and I couldn't really move, and I'd have somewhat of like a fearful experience. And then one night I remembered like thinking, oh my God, they're coming for me.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, well, that was an odd thing to think. So I asked him about that. And then he was like, basically he said that it was abduction experiences with the Zetas, the Greys. And then he went in, he actually just offered it up to me. He said that I had a hybrid child and she wanted to make contact with me, and her name is Pearl.
Pearl. Who named her?
She named her.
She named
her.
herself.
That's her name. Yeah, that's
cool.
her choice. Yeah, so I was just like, I didn't even know what to say, so I didn't even ask anything more. I was just like, thank you.
Yeah, and what does she look like?
She looks very human. She looks like me when I was her age.
Okay.
Like she was about 9 years old.
So she hasn't got many like alien characteristics.
Well, no, not really.
No.
It's funny, like I was really surprised by that. That was the first thing I said. I was like, wow, like you're so cute and you look human. Her eyes are just like slightly bigger.
Oh, that sounds cool.
And we went back and forth actually. We were like, just slightly bigger. She's like, just slightly bigger. And we're like, it was so cute.
So did any part of you think, well, I didn't ask to have this child, you know, they've kind of made this child from me and I didn't give my consent? Was there any kind of a bit of resentment, or was it just happy that you'd had Pearl? And
yeah, no, there was no resentment at all.
Okay.
Like I felt utterly like just mystified about the whole about the whole program.
But you knew something was wrong before you went to see Bashar. You knew something was happening to you, and that kind of crystallized your fears, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, I knew that I was having experiences in what I would say is like another dimension. But I didn't feel like, I felt like this, if anything, gave me more clarity and more like beauty and awakening.
And purpose, perhaps?
Yeah, definitely purpose to it.
So, how did you get in contact with the other members of the, like Bridget, and how did that come about?
Well, I met Bridget at a Bashar event here in LA. He does them live, so I saw her. She had mentioned that she was pulling together a community for the hybrid parents.
Yeah.
And I knew that I was a hybrid parent, and so I went up to her after it was over and just said, hey, this is my information. And then she and I clicked. Me and Bridget were super tight.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So why do you think they took you?
I believe that I chose it. I believe that I chose it on another level, like before I came to live here.
Yeah.
And I also think it's in my lineage with my mother, and who knows, maybe even further back from that. But I do believe that it's something, because my mom was also having similar experiences at the same time that I was.
Yeah. So what does your dad think?
My father and I haven't talked about it.
Okay. Would you like more hybrid children, or do you think you're just going to have Pearl and that's going to be it?
I have another hybrid. Well, I have.
How many have you?
I know of 3 now.
Oh wow!
3 hybrid children.
So your mother at 3, at 27.
Yeah.
You're looking good.
Thank you. I know. Well, the Zetas, they know how to do it.
Yeah.
They know how to keep my figure upgraded.
So how does it actually work? So they come and take some of your DNA or your eggs and then splice it together with someone else, and then voila.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. I've never had the experience of being pregnant and then like losing the child, which I know other detainees have had that experience. But I don't think that they've ever done that with me. I think it's really just like genetic material, taking of my eggs.
Because some people have had the experience of sex as well, haven't they? So
I have had that.
Okay, could you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, it was one of the most vivid memories that I've had on a ship. But I was actually in a meeting with other humans, sort of like in a classroom setting, and one of the Zeta Greys came to the front of the classroom, sat down, and there was a human sitting with them, and it started asking us questions telepathically, and we all started answering, and then he opened it up for questions that we could ask him, and then all of a sudden I'm sitting next to this extraterrestrial being with green skin.
Okay, what, like humanoid type?
Humanoid.
Yeah,
and I was just immediately like so sexually turned on by just like looking at this being, and I was very surprised, but I felt all this love for him, and automatically we're like making love on this bed in this classroom.
Well, in front of
everyone.
Oh, okay.
So we're making, and I remember the Zeta like turning his attention to us, and like everyone was watching. There were humans that were outraged.
Oh, I can.
They were like, "This is not okay." It was so funny. I just like we
but
didn't
you
care.
consented. You were okay with it.
Yeah. I was into it.
Yeah. Where was it? Do you know where the alien person was from?
Yes, I do actually. He is a reptilian.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I get a bit. I can't follow it that easily, but so there's Greys and Reptilians, and the Reptilians work for the Greys or work alongside them or something like that.
They work together.
Okay.
Yeah, they work together.
What? So would you? Like Bridget's trying to create a community. Would you go and live with other hybrid mothers? Is that the kind of the long-term plan?
Yeah, that's definitely my plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But do you think the children will ever come to Earth?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I think that the more action that I take personally, because it's my, in a sense, like it's my reality, like this is sort of a dream reality too, and the more action I take in the direction of living in the community and being with other hybrid parents, that I'll get to experience that.
Yeah.
Suzanne Hansen is a very dear friend of mine who's had experiences all her life. She's a former teacher. She now runs UFocus New Zealand and has had many conscious experiences. She's been taken aboard craft many, many times. She's also been shown her children on the craft. And she's going to confront some of you that perhaps still feel that a lot of the Zetas and Greys are in fact robotic-like creatures, because that's not been her experience. And it's not been the experience of many of my clients. Now, this is a particularly fascinating experience that Suzanne had. She was told to come and see me and have a regression. She flew over from New Zealand to Perth. Not exactly cheap, but she was told that this was one, she shouldn't have any come in with any mandate, any particular experience. She had to be open to what we explored. So this was totally, in any way, not a conscious experience. But I want to demonstrate something I believe, very profound.
My name is Suzanne Hanson, and I'm the director of a New Zealand UFO sighting and contact research network called UFOCUS NZ. I have experienced contact with extraterrestrial species since early childhood. Today I will describe two directly related experiences on board craft, which demonstrate how some souls are altered, educated and fostered by ET species as a part of ongoing constructive programs and agendas for the future benefit of mankind.
In 1962, when I was 8 years old, I was taken on board a craft and into a large familiar room that I had visited often with other human children. Here we learned to interact and socialise comfortably and competently with other species of ET children, using enhanced telepathy and sentiency. On this occasion, I was taken aside by an adult grey and asked if I'd like to meet another child somewhere on board the craft.
Before I go any further, I just want you to be aware of the little cradle that you're seeing in this picture. And that particular cradle, when Suzanne first saw it, she burst into tears. And she says, "I know that cradle." And she described the fact that when she'd had, and she had a very difficult childhood, that when she'd had a particularly traumatic time on Earth with her human family, she was put on that cradle. And it actually had certain frequencies that would rebalance her energy field. And she burst into tears because she had been shown such compassion and such love.
The grey telepathically conveyed thoughts, pictures and explanations to me regarding this child and its life. But the volume of information was too great to retain consciously, and I was just left with an overall impression regarding meeting a new friend. The grey told me about the child with considerable care, and I sensed there was something he was not yet telling me, but he was seeking my cooperation with this meeting. We proceeded to a small room and waited, and I felt excited about meeting a new friend. Two greys entered the room with a vibrant blue ball of light floating in the air between them. As I stared at the ball in surprise, having expected a child to arrive, I experienced profound feelings of love and familiarity and sobbed at these unexpected thoughts. The grey told me I would love this ball of light in the future, as it would become my son. He referred to it as both a source and a complex system, and said I had known it since before my own birth. The grey began an intense mind-to-mind download consisting of 3 streams of information. The first just calmed my emotions and confusion. They wanted us to get to know each other, future mother and son, and they would observe how we related to each other. A second stream embedded extensive information into my subconscious concerning the purpose of this project, the genetics involved in the creation of my son's body, and the dual education he would receive on board craft, both as a child and in his source or soul state, which he told me had been enhanced and altered by them for a specific purpose. Finally, a third stream brought my mind back to the present as an 8-year-old child, and they left me to play with the ball for a while. I tried to relate to the ball by first asking it to bounce, but it just floated there, unresponsive. I felt disappointed and sat down on the floor. Suddenly, I felt as if I was being watched and became aware the ball was thinking at me. It descended down onto my shoulder, and we were soon racing around the room, communicating happily. But, all too soon, the greys returned. They expressed satisfaction that the meeting had gone well. 2 of them took the ball of light away, and I felt deep sadness and longing. The grey assured me that we would meet again many times up until the day that this son would be born. So we returned to where the other children were interacting. In 1983, now aged 28 years old and near to full term in my first pregnancy, I was taken on board craft. My memory begins with me being assisted down a corridor by 2 tall entities, a mixture of species. They expressed concern for me as I had been ill throughout the pregnancy, and so they tenderly supported me as we entered a small room. They helped me onto a shelf-like bed, and we were joined by a grey. He explained that they were bringing someone to merge with me, and I was not to be concerned as everything would be fine. Holding his hand over my forehead, he told me he first needed to retrieve some memories from my subconscious mind, which had been embedded there in childhood. Immediately, my mind was filled with images, emotions, and memories of past meetings associated with a ball of blue light, and I became really tearful as I realised it was the soul of my child soon to be born. As he calmed my emotions, a group of ET children came into the room, bringing with them the now familiar soul or ball of energy. He stated these young entities had grown up on board craft with this soul, and they would play an integral part in supporting him in his life. There was a real air of excitement as the process of merging began. The grey slowed my metabolism right down to prepare my body for the intense energy of the soul, necessary to prevent shock to my body. During the hypnotic regression with Mary, my voice became really slow and almost indistinguishable at this point, and my body felt cold and numb. Slowly the soul entered my body and the body of my child-to-be. I felt infused with light and weightlessness as the grey slowly brought my metabolism back to normal again. He stated my son would be born late, which he was, and that he would be accompanied through his life by watchers, a terminology to describe a protective system they would provide for him. He added there are thousands of children being born in a world like him, part of an extensive project to create positive changes and accelerated evolution from within the human species.
These two experiences illustrate the complexity of the soul state and reveal extraterrestrial involvement with souls incarnating on this planet for specific purposes, but can also be enhanced, altered and educated by external forces or species. Now this is going to, for some of you, I think, be quite a difficult concept, and I understand that. But what it seems to be suggesting to me, and obviously Richard Dolan talked about it yesterday, that we are not just perhaps looking at the fact that we're looking at extraterrestrials, interdimensionals, transcendentals, and perhaps even some from our own future. But the bottom line seems to be, as this 15-year-old that was seeing Uncle Ted and Granddad as orbs of light, that they are also part of this big picture of these beings that we are interacting with or having encounters with. And there seems to be far more going on than we ever thought. And there is the sense that there is no actual separation in that sense. I think for the one thing I want to say now is that the abduction, the so-called abduction scenario, I participated in a thesis by Simon Harvey Wilson that was the comparisons between shamanism and abductions in Western Australia in 2000. And what Simon discovered was the parallels were quite fascinating in terms of transformation, healing, etc., etc. And my sense is that what we're seeing is a modern-day shamanic experience where we are being challenged to transcend our fears, to be prepared for our multidimensional nature. Now, you can take that or leave it as you will, but it seems to me that if they've bothered to change and alter our genetics and gradually enhance our abilities in the way that they're doing so that we can become multidimensional, why would they bother if it wasn't an agenda which seems to me to suggest we are being helped to change and to grow and to understand our multidimensional and the magnificent nature of what we could be, because I believe we all have the potential for that. And perhaps, just perhaps, they're giving us a helping hand, and I believe, from what I've seen so far anyway, that's the case.
Let's come together to open the new world era to eliminate all conflicts and differences. It's time for everyone to join hands. the world from darkness to brightness, from suffering to happiness, from ignorant to the knowledge one. Change the world, we have to do it the easy way. Happy laughs, we're happy and joyful with childlike innocence. Everyone must join hand in hand. Gently close your eyes, relax, relax. Still your mind at the center of the body and look within. At the same position of the one who knew from the past. Change the world from the era of darkness to the era of light. From the order on to this new era, the world will be like heaven on earth. No class, race, and society. Everyone will be happy. We'll speak the same and live like this. Become as one with smiles all around. We'll be kind, the world will change. The world will change. Let's come together to change the world. Let's come together to change the world. Let's come together to change the world. Let's change the world. We have to do it the easy way and relax. Each other with childlike innocence. Everyone must join hand in hand. Gently close your eyes and relax. Still your mind at the center of the body and look within. As the light will heal from the crowds of soldiers, let's come together to change the world. Cambiemos el mundo juntos. Let's come together to change the world. Our list is many means. Let's come together to change the world. هيا معنا غير العالم. Let's come together to change the world. يقنا الشرائع أوراق. Let's come together to change the world. 让我们来一起改变世界。联合铸造那 pretty ways. Let's come together to change the world. 我们是给我的不伤不动。Let's come together to change the world. 一緒に世界を変えよう。Let's come together to change the world. 融入这个联络本意。Let's come together to open the new era to eliminate all conflicts and differences. It's time for everyone to join hand in hand. At last, now the world's beyond healing. It's time to change the world. As the one who knew in the past, in this period of our time, we will see before we depart this world, and one must join hand in hand to change the world from darkness to brightness, from suffering to happiness, from ignorance Change the world, we have to do it this way. Happy laughs, we're happy and joyful with childlike innocence. Everyone must join hand in hand. Gently close your eyes, relax, relax. Still your mind at the center of the body and look within. At the same position of the one who knew from the past. Change the world from the era of darkness to the era of light. From the old era to this new era, the world will be like heaven on earth. No classes in society, everyone be living happy. Speak the same, and we like this. Become as one, with smiles all around. We'll be kind, the world will change. The world will change. Let's come together to change the world. Let's come together